A lot of people have the idea that a novelist goes off to a cabin in the woods for a month, writes a best-selling novel, comes back and sends it in, and it gets published. What actually happens is it takes you 6, 8, 10, 12 months to write the first draft. And there'll probably be more like 3 to 4 to 5 more drafts before you even show it to editor. Before that, you probably showed it to some beta readers, and they give you some feedback.
Welcome to the True Fiction Project, a podcast series that explores the origins of fiction. Every week, we begin with an interview, nonfiction, followed by a creative piece, fiction, inspired by something from the interview. The idea is to demonstrate, of course, that fiction is born out of our life experiences. Now, here's your host, storyteller, author, public speaker, health and wellness expert, Renita Hora.
Welcome to the True Fiction Project. I am your host, Renita Hora, and I have with me today Dr. John Bukowski. He is a former vet, as in veterinary practitioner. He's a health researcher, a medical writer, but he now writes short fiction and fast-paced novels, including Project Suicide and the recently published Checkout Time. I'm definitely going to ask him more about those. Let him explain those himself. He's done a whole bunch of writing, consumer materials, websites, radio scripts. So without further ado, here is Dr. John Bukowski. Hi, John. Welcome to the True Fiction Project.
Hi, Renita. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. So how do you go from being a vet and a health researcher and just a medical guy in general to writing? Are you writing about health and medical stuff? Are those what your stories are about?
Yeah, in a way, I'll go back to like my secondary school training and into college. And I'm a person who has been blessed or perhaps cursed with being fascinated by a lot of topics. And in school, my big three were history, and I still love history to this day, English, reading and writing. I've been an avid reader all my life of fiction and nonfiction, and science. When you want to do a career, though, you got to make a decision. You can't do all of those, so I chose science. And so I went off and worked for my veterinary degree, and I practiced for, about 7 years or so in the Michigan area, southern Michigan. Then after maybe my 500th euthanasia, I decided I wanted to do something that didn't require so much of a stress-filled playing God, as it were, life and death decisions. So I went back to school and got a master's and then a PhD in epidemiology, the study of disease patterns.
Right.
During COVID, you heard a lot of people who said they were epidemiologists, as well as a lot of real epidemiologists. So I did that, and as I was doing that and working for government and industry, I found that I was researching less and less and writing more and more. Partly that was because I enjoyed it. And number two, my bosses appreciated it. This guy can write. So whenever there was anything important to be written, I was usually tapped. So I did that for about the epidemiology career for about 20, 25 years. And then I wanted to move back to the Midwestern United States. I'd been living in New Jersey. So my wife started her own company. She's a medical editor. So I joined that as a medical writer, a freelance medical writer. And I did that for quite successfully for quite a few years. And then the Great Recession hit in 2008. And no one was hiring people to do what I was doing. So part of our income dried up. But I had time. And any writer who writes anything, advertising copy, medical writer, whatever, wants to be the great American novelist. Whether they say they do or not, we all do. So I said, hey, I have some time. I got a 6-8 month period here with not a lot of medical writing to do. So I started writing fiction. And I actually produced a novel, a thriller novel that is still on my computer gathering dust, and what Stephen King would call a trunk novel. It just sits there, but it got me hooked. And so even as business picked up, I kept writing short fiction. I plugged away at a couple other novels. And about 2015, I guess it was, about 9 years ago, I retired from medical writing completely, and I started writing fiction.
So the
And
novel you were talking about, was that Project Suicide?
no, and that's
No.
that's the thing that you have to, when you ask a writer how many books have you written, they always
Mm,
say written or gotten published,
I see.
because they're
I
not the
get
same
you.
thing. Project
Yep.
Suicide was my first published novel in
Hmm.
2022. I had several novels that didn't go anywhere, and I'm working on a bunch of ones right now that are in various levels of completion.
Mm,
But yeah, Project Suicide, that was followed by Checkout Time the next year.
got it. Got it. I see. So two published novels, others written, hidden, trunk novels, and many,
Right,
many short stories as well.
right, right. Right now, I have about 15 short stories that have been published in either anthologies
Mm-hmm.
or in magazines.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, Project Suicide, of course, is a medical thriller. Is that the same for Checkout Time, your second published novel?
No,
No.
Checkout Time is a little different. Project Suicide, I'll give you the thumbnail on it.
Mm-hmm.
It is a story of how a cure for Alzheimer's disease is perverted into an assassination drug. Now, high profile politicians are killing themselves,
I
and
see.
only a drunken genius can save the country. That was very much a what do you call a medical techno thriller. It has overtones of things about genetics and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I tried not to put too much of that in because you don't want people's eyes to gloss over.
I
You,
see. Yeah.
Michael Crichton also did that, and in some respects, I would say Michael Crichton was my one of my influences for writing this type of novel.
Got it. Got it. Now, I have to ask because there are so many writers out there who experiment both with short fiction as well as long form, and such as yourself. And, we're told all these things. I don't know how much of it we're told these things, but, honestly, we can do what we like. Oh, you should publish some of the short fiction because that'll help you get the novels published. And some people are very sort of gung ho about that strategy, if you call it a strategy, and others are like, that doesn't make any sense. Where in that spectrum do you lie?
I believe the short fiction helps you for a couple of reasons. First of all, short fiction is much easier to get published,
Okay.
even though there's not the many venues there were 50 years ago for
Hmm.
short stories. There are many more than there are people who were willing to take on new authors in a novel.
Hmm.
So I think it
Okay.
does help you because it gives you some bona fides. It basically says, oh, this person's pitching me this novel. Can they write? Oh, look, they've already published 8 short stories or 10 short stories. Okay, that gives them a little more credibility. Maybe I'll take it, read it, rather than just put it in the circular file.
Right. So
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 I
your
think,
point being that short stories might be a good idea for debut novelists. So those who don't have a novel out. Is that right?
right. And that's true, but they're also fun to write.
They're also
They
fun.
don't
Okay.
require the long commitment of a novel. I found novel writing was very similar to working on my PhD. You
Mm,
do a little
okay.
bit every
Yep.
day for
A
months or
long time.
years at a time. Uh, and that's what it is with novel writing. A
Yep.
lot of people have the idea that a novelist goes off to a cabin in the woods for a month,
And
writes a best selling novel, comes back and sends it in, and it gets published. What actually happens is it takes you 6, 8, 10, 12 months to write the first draft. And there'll probably be more like 3 to 4 to 5 more drafts
correct.
before you even show it to editor. Before that, you probably showed it to some beta readers, somebody, friends who are writers, and you say, what do you think? Is
Mm,
this good? Does it make sense? Is there a plot hole? Does it flow well enough? And they give you some feedback. And then you keep plugging away. And after about 5 or 6 revisions, rounds of revision, each of which take 2 to 3 weeks apiece,
mm.
then it's ready to go to an editor. And that's far from being published at that point.
Yeah.
So
So
it takes a few years.
it does take a few years. And with the short stories, though, even though you say, and I believe you, it's not like I'm contesting it, that you can do it faster. Is it not more difficult to do a full-on, well-fleshed-out, developed story, beginning, middle, end, plot points, whatever, in, what is it, 10,000 words, 5,000, 15,000?
Well, anywhere from 1,500 to 10,000. They really
Okay,
vary in length.
so that's really short. Okay. I mean, could be really short.
Yeah.
So with the little space, is it not more difficult to get the story in?
It's different.
Mm.
You start out, it's like if you're watching a half an hour TV show versus a 2.5 hour movie.
Got it.
There's a complete story in the half an hour TV show.
Yeah.
But it's accelerated. It doesn't have as grand. There's fewer characters. There's fewer plot lines. There's fewer all these things.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up being a student of things like The Twilight Zone, which were very half an hour anthology stories.
Right.
And it's still basically the same structure, but really abbreviated.
Got it.
Maybe instead of being multiple plot lines, there'll be one, for example, in a short story.
I see. So today you are going to read us what for the creative portion of this episode?
I'm going to read the first chapter, which is a relatively short chapter. It's only about a 5 or 6 minute read.
First chapter of which book?
Checkout Time.
Okay.
My second novel. And I'll set that up with Checkout Time is a story about a arsonist bomber known mysteriously as Conrad Hilton. That's his pseudonym.
Okay.
And he's trying to extort money from hotel owners. Pay me or I'll bomb your hotels. He's pursued by a beautiful government FBI agent and a handsome government researcher, who I modeled after myself. They pursue him until Conrad turns the tables and the hunters become the hunted.
I see. Now, aside from the fact that, you modeled that the researcher after yourself, a handsome, good-looking researcher after yourself, what is the true life inspiration for this story?
For Checkout Time, it actually goes back to when I was working in industry. And I had to travel on business, and I went to a hotel, and went to many hotels. But I went to this one hotel, and I sat on the bed and looked up at the ceiling, and there was a trapdoor. And you could tell it was meant to access an air handling duct or something. It had those little just buttons that you just pushed and turned, and it would pop open. And I thought, and this is a great for writers. They always talk about the what if scenario. That's how most stories start. And I said, you could put something there.
Yeah.
What could you put there?
What could you put there? And it's almost like a writing prompt, right? It's like you go about your daily life,
exactly.
Come across a situation, and that's a writing prompt. And you're thinking, okay, let me start there. And what if?
Right. And so my first what if was, what would you put up there?
What would you put up there?
If you put like stolen jewels or cash, you could have the drug dealers chasing you because you found their money, it plops down on the floor. That's one type of thriller. My inclination is to have a bomb up there.
Okay, well, I cannot wait to hear the piece, but before you get into it, do share with our audiences where we can find your work, your books, social media, where we can find you online, whatever you want to give us. Okay,
well, you can find most stuff through my website, which is thrillerjohnb.net. THRILLER, John B, JOHNB.net.
Okay, great. Thriller.
And also, you can get directly to each one of my novels right on Amazon by doing projectsuicidenovel.com or checkouttimenovel.com. Both those will take you directly to my books.
Fantastic. So dedicated websites for each of your books. And of course, we're going to have all of that information in the show notes, linked and everything. John, wonderful. Let's hear your story, your opening to Checkout Time. And now to the premise of the True Fiction Project, which of course is to create fiction out of nonfiction.
Thomas Tomasinski had experienced a bumpy flight before, but never in a hotel room. Nor had a roar like a freight train ever awakened him from a dream about silky red hair draped over a trim athletic frame. Before his eyes opened, his ears popped, as if the room suddenly lost cabin pressure. Then turbulence that would make Chuck Yeager lose his lunch launched the king-size bed a foot to the right. The air filled with debris, bits of plaster and insulation snowing down from a foot-wide rent in the ceiling. Then he smelled an acrid mix of electrical wiring and building materials that had surpassed the activation energy needed to turn them into fuel. The roof over his head cracked amid a shower of sparks. Tom hit the worn carpet, eyes stinging and lungs hacking, as a section of burning ceiling took his place on the bed. The air was cleaner near the floor, but the dust still made it difficult to see. Fighting claustrophobia, Tom forced himself to think about the floor plan. The door should be to the left, somewhere. He winced as his outstretched fingers bent back against the chair leg. Keep moving, he thought, shouldering past the chair, knees and palms scraping against the worn carpet. Another piece of ceiling fell behind him, showering his bare legs with hot needles. It was as if fire was racing him to the door. He prayed he'd win. Tom scurried faster, head low, skin scraped by the cheap carpet. Without warning, his scalp thwacked a wooden surface. Stars flared and the world grayed. Then more cinders hit his leg and full consciousness returned. The hotel door was flat, smooth, and not yet hot. But the smoke was thicker here, forcing him to snatch a breath in between coughs. He flailed at the metal door handle, which turned but wouldn't unlatch. He jammed up and down a dozen times. Nothing. He rose against the door to get more leverage, but the smoke forced him back down. His throat burned as he fought a coughing jag. I'm going to die like this, he thought, coughing in my underwear against the hotel door. Then a thought burst into his brain. The deadbolt. Tom thanked whatever God was watching over him and reached for the lock. A spark sent another hot needle into his hand. Cursing, he shook off the insult, then attacked the deadbolt. He heard a click as the lock turned. The door unlatched with the next flip. He banged his head again, opening the door, but barely felt it, relieved to be in a hallway bathed in emergency lighting. The pale glow changed to a strobe as a klaxon sounded. An automated voice announced, "There is a fire. Please evacuate the building." Ducking his head below the smoke, Tom coughed. "No shit, Sherlock." The automated voice ignored him, continuing his cold, mechanical drone. "Do not use the elevators." Tom didn't need to think about the floor plan this time. Stairs would be on either end of the hall. His room was nearest the left exit, but that seemed to be the source of the smoke. Tom shuffled on all fours, body low. Right knee and right hand moved together, followed by left hand and left knee. The smoke got thicker, requiring an even lower crouch. Right then left, right then left. He hung on to the cadence like a prayer. The air ahead was brighter, the flashing strobe bouncing off the gleam of elevator doors. A few more feet and he'd be at the exit. As he crawled forward, he grabbed something soft and alive. "Ow!" said the person who belonged to the foot. Tom kept moving as the foot became a shapely calf, the calf a thigh. His face jammed into smooth, taut nylon. "Get the hell off my ass," said the owner of the panty-covered bottom. "Move it," Tom shouted. The exit door opened and they both tumbled onto cold concrete. The glow was more constant here, battery-powered lights replacing the strobes. Panting, skivvies barely providing scant insulation against the floor, Tom looked at his fellow escapee. He recognized the red hair in the face, which looked older without makeup. She was wearing nylon hipsters under a tee that read, "Fuck the whales, every mammal for himself." "Hey, Tom," she said. "Hey, Asian Sally," he replied. "Would you like that drink now?" She smiled in the pale light. "I'm buying. Let's go find an open bar." Tom heard bare feet plopping down the stairs, then a grunted shit as those feet found a pebble. Grinning, he sent his feet after hers.
All right, John, thank you so much for that. I cannot wait to delve into the entire book. It's been a pleasure to have you on the True Fiction Project, John. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This is the True Fiction Project, and I am your host, Renita Hora.
Thank you for listening to the True Fiction Project with Renita Hora. Be sure to subscribe to the newsletter to receive more inspiring stories showing how fiction is born from our everyday experiences. For more information, visit www.truefictionproject.com.